Johnny Talks Sports with the Week 15 NFL predictions. It's hard to believe we're already at Week 15 of the regular season. Just 3 more weeks of the regular season to go until we begin the playoffs. So last week, I went 11-5 with my picks. Awesome record to have, although there were a couple picks that I wish would have gone in my favor at the end of the day. But great quality though. I did pick the Chiefs to upset the Patriots, and I did pick the Rams to upset the Seahawks. So that's 2 good picks I had last week. So hopefully I can have a better week this week. Even another 11-5 record this week would be excellent. And as always, I begin with Thursday Night Football. This week, Thursday Night Football features the New York Jets and the Baltimore Ravens. Now this pick, it seems quite obvious to me. The Jets, yes, they have strung along a couple of wins together, but Lamar Jackson, every single week when it comes to predicting a Ravens game, it's what is Lamar Jackson going to do this week? Well, it was said that Lamar Jackson has a quad injury, but there is a 100% chance that I think he will play this week. No problems. But I do think maybe the Ravens won't be using those read options a lot. In fact, they don't really need to use the read options this week because I think they'll beat the Jets anyway. The question is by how much. So I'm picking the Ravens to win this very convincingly. I think we're going to see a lot of Mark Ingram and Justice Hill this week to kind of rest up Lamar's quad because you don't want to risk anything in more severity heading into the playoffs. So I think we're going to see a lot more Mark Ingram and Justice Hill this week. So I'm going to pick Baltimore. Next, we have what would be another obvious pick, would be the Patriots and the Bengals. The Bengals, they have a commanding lead in the sweepstakes for LSU quarterback Joe Burrow. Earlier in the season, we thought there was going to be Tua Tagovailoa that we picked number 1 overall. But now Joe Burrow has emerged as the number 1 candidate to be the number 1 draft pick in April's 2020 draft. But the Patriots offense has struggled throughout these last couple of weeks in the season. In fact, all season long it's felt like we've seen the Patriots struggle a bit offensively. But I'm going to take New England in this one because what better way to kind of get your mojo back than to beat the team with the worst record in the league. So I'm going to take New England in this one. And I think we're going to see the Patriots offense. I think we're going to finally see the Patriots offense return. Despite the Patriots kind of being short at the wide receiver position at this point in the season, I still think that they will be very capable of beating these Bengals. Next, we've got Tampa Bay and Detroit. Jameis Winston is he's doing solid. He's more of the Jekyll and Mr. Hyde type of quarterback. He can throw touchdowns, so a lot of passing yards, but he still has issues turning that football over. And I did say last week that even though the Buccaneers are not in playoff contention, this is basically an audition tape for Jameis Winston to be the Buccaneers quarterback in 2020. Because if Jameis Winston, if he can show some promise in the last handful of games the Buccaneers have this season, then I expect Jameis Winston to return at quarterback for the Buccaneers. But if it is a complete failure for Jameis Winston these last couple games, then I expect the Buccaneers to move on from Jameis Winston and draft one of the quarterbacks in April's draft, whether it happens to be Tua Tagovailoa, Justin Herbert, Jake Fromm, or any quarterback, Jalen Hurts, whatsoever, depending on who it is. But I'm picking Tampa Bay to win this week because I still haven't seen anything from the Lions that, without Matthew Stafford, how successful are they? So I'm going to take Tampa Bay in this one because Tampa Bay, they are on a roll right now. And wins by the Buccaneers this late in the season, it could help with confidence going into the following season. So I will pick Tampa Bay in this matchup. Next, we have a NFC North showdown, the Chicago Bears and the Green Bay Packers. The Bears are coming off a huge win last Thursday night against the Cowboys. So I expect the Bears to come out on all cylinders to begin the game. But once we get to that fourth quarter in Lambeau Field, Aaron Rodgers will just do his magic. I think the Bears get off to a strong start, being off of those extra days rest compared to Green Bay, I still think that the Packers and Lambeau, it translates to a Packers victory. So I will go with Green Bay in this matchup. Now I don't know who to pick in this showdown between the Texans and the Titans, because this is a battle for first place in the AFC South. So this is one of the more underrated matchups of the week. This is going to be a matchup that everyone is going to have their eyes on for one reason or another. But the big reason why this is hyped up is, as I said just a second ago, this is for first place in the AFC South. And the Texans, they're coming off a lackluster performance against the Broncos last week, led by quarterback Drew Lock, who is doing very well as an NFL quarterback right now. He's had a couple solid last two games. However, just like when the Texans had that lackluster performance against the Ravens, they came back the very next week and got a victory. And I think, as the old saying goes, history repeats itself. So the Texans coming off a lackluster performance, and they will recover and win this week. Although Ryan Tannehill has shown a lot of promise, I'm sure the Dolphins are definitely regretting letting go of Ryan Tannehill. Well, definitely trading him to the Titans. But I think the Dolphins, it's another story for another day. But Ryan Tannehill has really ignited this Titans team. Because ever since he started at quarterback, the Titans, it's like they have new life. But this is the one matchup I wouldn't know who to pick. But I'm going to pick the Texans in this one. But I think this game, it goes in either direction. It's literally a coin flip at this point. Next, we have the Broncos and the Chiefs. The Chiefs are coming off a big win last week against the Patriots, while the Broncos are coming off a big win against the Texans. So both teams are coming off big wins against great quality teams. Now, Drew Lock is doing a fantastic job so far at the Broncos quarterback position. But he hasn't faced a quarterback like Pat Mahomes yet, the reigning NFL MVP. Now that Pat Mahomes is back and fully healthy at this point, maybe not necessarily fully healthy, but he's healthy enough to at least provide a spark for the Chiefs, and that's what the Chiefs have been doing ever since he returned from injury. We've seen this Chiefs offense get back to where it was a year ago. So I'm going to pick Kansas City in this one. Although this is a division showdown, so I do expect the Broncos to keep this pretty close. But I think the Chiefs will win this at the very end. So I'm going to take Kansas City. And this is one of the I have to pick somebody this week games between the Miami Dolphins and the New York Giants. And while both teams have shown some promise throughout this season, I'm going to pick the Giants because recently they have shown a lot of promise, especially on Monday Night Football against the Eagles with Eli Manning back at quarterback. That's the thing. If the Giants stick with Eli Manning this week, the Giants will win. And I'm going to assume that they're going to have Eli Manning at quarterback this week again for the Giants. And I think they'll get the win here. Although it could be in the Giants' best interest to tank for Chase Young, because the Giants, they need an edge rusher, while the Dolphins, even if they keep winning games, they can still get the quarterback they want in Tua Tagovailoa. So I'm going to take New York in this one, because I like what I've seen out of the Giants, especially on Monday Night Football, coming very close to upsetting the Eagles and ultimately putting a dash in their playoff hopes. Next, we've got the Eagles and the Redskins, an NFC East showdown. The Eagles, they look very short at wide receiver at the moment. So many injuries are piling up on this Eagles team, while the Redskins, well, they're just the Redskins. So right now, the Eagles, they do look completely short-handed at the wide receiver position, and their offense just looks lackluster. But this is kind of like what we've seen the last couple of seasons out of the Eagles. They look like they're about to crack under the pressure, but then we see the Eagles fight and come back, and they make the playoffs, and I think this is going to be the case again. I think the Eagles, even though the win may not look pretty this week, they'll still get the win over Washington, setting up the showdown in Week 16 against the Cowboys, ultimately for the NFC East and a spot in the playoffs. So I'm going to take Philadelphia in this one because just like with the Texans over the Titans, history does repeat itself. And the Eagles, even when Carson Wentz went down 2 years ago, we all thought the Eagles' chances of the Super Bowl were over. But then in came Nick Foles and led the Eagles all the way to the Lombardi Trophy. So I'm not going against the Eagles at this point. Next, we have the Seahawks and the Panthers. The Panthers have been eliminated from playoff contention, while the Seahawks, they still have a theoretical shot at the number 1 seed in the NFC playoff race. And the Seahawks are coming off a abysmal performance against the Rams on Sunday Night Football last week. Russell Wilson is right now, I think, in second or third place in the NFC race, behind definitely Lamar Jackson and possibly behind Pat Mahomes, despite Pat Mahomes missing a handful of games this season. So I'm going to pick Seattle to recover from last week. I think they just needed a reality check before the playoffs, because sometimes losing for the playoffs, it does benefit your team moving forward. It kind of gets them a reality check knowing that there's no free passes once you get to the playoffs. Once you lose once, your season's over. So I think they just took that loss last week. They were humbled, and I think they're going to move forward and win this week against Carolina. Next, we have what I think is another I have to pick somebody this week. Because the Raiders, they've shown a couple of flashes this season. We've seen them pull off wins against teams like the Bears. We've seen them compete pretty well throughout the season. While the Jaguars, the beginning of the Minshew mania, it became a monthly fad, but ever since it was no longer the fad of the month, the Jaguars have struggled to even get a win together. And I think it's going to be the same thing, especially the Jaguars coming off a miserable performance defensively against a team like the Chargers, who hasn't shown really much offensive promise than what we were anticipating and hoping to see from LA. And I think the Raiders are going to win this one. So I'm going to take Oakland in this one. Next, we've got Cleveland and Arizona. This is a battle of the two most recent number 1 overall picks in the last 2 NFL drafts. We've got Baker Mayfield on one side, Kyler Murray on the other. And I think this game is going to be a very close game. I think it's going to be very low scoring. In the end, though, I think it's going to be Baker Mayfield that makes a play in the fourth quarter that Kyler Murray won't. And I have nothing against Cliff Kingsbury coaching the Cardinals at this point. And Cliff Kingsbury is doing all right for somebody that doesn't have any NFL experience. I think if you give this Cardinals offense a couple more years, maybe about 2 or 3 more years down the line, we're going to see the Cardinals competing in that NFC West year in and year out. But the problem is the Cardinals' offensive line has not helped Kyler Murray get protected at all this season, because Kyler Murray is the most sacked quarterback in the National Football League this season. And we're going to see glimpses of this Cardinals' lackluster offensive line. Even the running game for the Cardinals has been a disappointment this year. David Johnson's been quite disappointing. I know he's had some injuries to deal with, but the offensive line has been very disappointing for Arizona this season. And I think the Cleveland defensive line is going to completely feast on this one. I'm going to take Cleveland in this. Next, we have the Vikings and the Chargers. And the Chargers are coming off a big win against the Jaguars. Yes, only the Jaguars, but some wins, a win can translate into one more, and one more can translate into 2 more. But the Vikings, they beat division rival Detroit last week, and the Vikings right now, they are in the race for one of the wild card spots in the NFC side of the playoff bracket. And this is not necessarily a game where the Vikings are in must-win territory. They want to make the playoffs. But this is not like a big game in prime time on Monday Night Football, because Kirk Cousins tends to crack under the pressure when it matters for the Vikings. However, I think For once, Kirk Cousins will not be cracking under the pressure. I'm going to pick Minnesota to win this game. I just think behind the offense, I think we've seen the Vikings offense. It is started to do a complete 180 compared to seasons past. Diggs has been more involved in the passing game. We've seen Rudolph get quite involved lately in these last couple of games. I think the Vikings offense is right now, has some momentum and confidence at this point. So I will take Minnesota in this game. Next we have the Rams and the Cowboys. The Cowboys are coming off two abysmal performances. But Dak did all he could to try to come back against the Bears last week. Just wasn't enough. While the Rams, I think the Rams are back. I think the Rams, they've had a lot of momentum these last couple of weeks. Right now the Rams, they're trying to make a charge to get a wild card spot. They're still in the playoff hunt. And right now, this is a battle for both teams to keep their season alive. Although I think the Rams need this win more because the Cowboys, they could lose this one and they could just win the last two games of the season. They'd still get in the playoff. They'd win the NFC East. So I'm going to take the Rams in this one because I just like what I've been seeing out of these Rams last couple weeks. It appears that the Cowboys players have given up on Jason Garrett, and I am completely expecting Jason Garrett to get the boot at the end of the season if the Cowboys don't win this NFC East and get to the playoffs. Because it's something that Cowboys fans are probably wanting. I feel like Cowboys fans wouldn't mind if the Cowboys just didn't win again this season. That way it ensures that Jason Garrett gets the axe on Black Monday. But I will take the Rams in this one either way. Next, we're moving on to the Atlanta Falcons and the San Francisco 49ers. The Falcons, I don't know what it is with the Falcons. They just seem to start winning games when they're no longer in playoff contention, which is kind of annoying for their fans. While San Francisco, on the other hand, they're coming off a last-second win against the Saints last week to take control currently of the number one seed in the NFC side of the playoff bracket. So right now the 49ers, they control their own destiny at this point to get the number one seed. And it's very important that the Niners don't screw up here and lose to a mediocre team like the Falcons. But just because the Falcons won last week, I think they're going to get a big reality check. Maybe not even reality check. Just motivate them to tank. Because right now Calvin Ridley is on the IR. He's done for the season with an abdominal injury. One of their best wide receivers. And Julio Jones hasn't caught a touchdown pass since, week 2? Yeah, it's in the Falcons' best interest to tank and not win again this season. So I will be taking San Francisco in this matchup. The Niners, they continue their unbelievable season. So I'm taking San Francisco. Saturday Night Football now, we have the Buffalo Bills and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Very hard to imagine that in Week 3, this would have been a primetime matchup. Because this game was flexed to the Sunday Night Football game this week. The Steelers, they are in the hunt for a wild card spot, as are the Bills, because unfortunately for the Bills, they have the same division as the Patriots. But despite how the Patriots have been playing lately, the Bills, they can still win the AFC. They can still win the AFC East. With the Patriots' struggles so far in these last 4 games, and the Bills, if the Bills win out, they will be the winners of the AFC East. That is something that I didn't think I would be saying at this point in the season back in July. And for the Pittsburgh Steelers, despite not having Antonio Brown, no Le'Veon Bell, no Ben Roethlisberger, for the last couple weeks, no Juju Smith-Schuster, no James Conner, the Steelers have still been managing to win. And right now, it has been speculated that Juju Smith-Schuster and James Conner will return this week. So that, I think, it's going to provide some energy for the Steelers. It's going to boost up their morale. For the Bills, they have really done phenomenal this season. They came up just short last week of pulling off an upset against the leading candidate for MVP, Lamar Jackson, last week. However, I just think right now, the Steelers, I think they're going to be confident, especially with Schuster and Connor returning to their lineup this weekend. I'm going to take the Steelers because Devlin Hodges, the Duck Commander, I think he will lead the Steelers to another victory, increasing the Steelers' playoff hopes. And finally, Monday Night Football, the Indianapolis Colts and the New Orleans Saints. Monday Night Football, primetime. Drew Brees it always seems like when Drew Brees is playing on Monday Night Football, there is some sort of record that can be broken that night. And the current thing that he can break at this point is most career touchdown passes. I believe he's only 2 behind Peyton Manning, and he's only 1 ahead of Tom Brady. So the question is he going to be chasing Peyton Manning's record, or is he going to be chasing Tom Brady's record? So that will be something. Especially if Brady throws 4 touchdown passes, then he'll be in first in that record, while Drew Brees can just break it the next night. So it's going to be crazy if you're a fanatic of NFL records. So we could see this record be broken within a relatively maybe 24 to 36 hour period. That'd be very crazy. But anyway, Saints trying to recover from last week against the 49ers. Heartbreaking loss at the gun over a game-winning field goal in one of the best games of the season, I believe. 48-46 scoregami. I think the Saints recover this week. I think the Saints win very convincingly over the Colts this week. So those are my picks this week to review, like the Ravens, Patriots, Buccaneers, Packers, Texans, Chiefs, Giants, Eagles, Seahawks, Raiders, Browns, Vikings, Rams, 49ers, Steelers, and Saints to win this week. Comment your picks down below, like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Just 2 more announcements before I sign off. For college football fans, the bowl season is here, and I'm hosting a Bowl Mania group again this season. I will put the link to the bowl group in the description box down below, so feel free to join the group. I enjoy the competition. And secondly, I'm very proud of the progress I've made. I've passed the 2,000 subscriber goal, which is something I had as a goal to beat by the end of the year, which is fantastic, knowing that 2019 is coming to a close. Let's see if we can maybe get a couple more, get close to 2.1K. So, have a good day, night whenever you're watching, and take care.